Right, it's just 7 o'clock. So just like to remind people too that we are recording tonight's meeting for all those in the gallery. I'd like to start off by doing the Gado acknowledgement. We would like to acknowledge this land that we meet on today is the traditional land of the Kaurna people, and that we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Kaurna people as the custodians of the Adelaide region, and that their cultural heritage beliefs are still as important to the living Kaurna people today. Before we do the council prayer, I just want to also acknowledge today is National Sorry Day, and want to read a National Sorry Day statement as well. On our pathway towards reconciliation, Sorry Day on 26th of May is an important day to remember the past policies of forced child removal resulting in stolen generations, excuse me, and the impact these policies and attitudes have on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Here we reflect on the sad and painful history of the stolen generations and recognise the moments of resilience, healing and the power of saying sorry. On the 13th of February 2008, more than 10 years after the Bringing Them Home report was tabled, the Prime Minister Kevin Rudd tabled a motion in Parliament apologising to Australia's Indigenous peoples, particularly the stolen generations and their families and communities, for laws and policies which had inflicted profound grief, suffering and loss on his fellow Australians. The first National Sorry Day was held on the 26th of May 1998, exactly 1 year after the Bringing Them Home report was presented to the Parliament. The Bringing Them Home report was the result of an inquiry into the removal of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children from their families, and recommends both an apology to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and I'll just leave it at that. The term stolen generations refers to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Australians who were forcibly removed as children from their families by government, welfare or church authorities and placed into institutional care with non-Indigenous foster families. The annual National Day Sorry commemorations help raise awareness about the significance of the forcible removal policies and contributed towards the important process of healing. I think that was important to do today. Now for the council prayer. We humbly bow before thy throne of mercy, O God our Heavenly Father, and seek wisdom and understanding as we face the duties of our united task, praying for the welfare of our city and the peace and prosperity of our land. In the name of Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Thank you. On leave we have Councillor Christina Barnett. Apologies from Mayor Shaver Hopkins, who tonight is somewhere in China on the Shandong mission at the invitation of State Council. So he's there tonight with Jimmy as well. And also Councillor Harris is an apology. I'll move on to the confirmation of the minutes from the previous meeting held on the 28th of April and the minutes of the special meeting of Council held on the 2nd of May. I would like to move those. Councillor Lee, do you want to speak to it? Seconder, Councillor all those in favour? Yes, carries. The Mayor's report, which you'll find on page 1276. I presume you've all had a chance to look at that report. Is anyone willing to move it? Councillor Lee, do you want to speak to it? I would like to second it. Councillor Bowman. Any other speakers? Right. All those in favour? It's been carried. Verbal reports from council representatives on local government or community organisations. Are there any?
Thank you, and really just on the Eastern Health Authority, 2 quick points. One, to note that at the moment the CEO performance review for the Eastern Health Authority is underway, and board members were invited to participate in a survey that was canvassing the performance of the CEO for the past 12 months. That as well, the Audit Committee of the Eastern Health Authority is meeting tomorrow night to review what is the annual business plan that Council's seen and has provided commentary to the Eastern Health Authority on. Also just to raise those 2 points at a very active point in time in the year for the Eastern Health Authority.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other reports?
Can I ask a question? Or no? Okay.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Any other reports? No? Okay, we'll move on to petitions. We have nil. Deputations, we have nil. Motions on notice, we have nil. Questions with notice, nil. Questions without notice. Very kind to me tonight. As per the protocol, we'll go through the papers on tonight's agenda, and I'll ask if anyone would like to pull out those papers, and we can then pass on to those that are not pulled out. I'll pull out 13.1 and 13. 18.1, appointment of presiding member in that. You want to look at that? History of Australian mural, 18.2. 19.1, loans to third parties, Council Evans. 19.2, financial assistance to local governments. 19.3, I'll pull out because there are alternative recommendations. 19.4, local government, accountability and governance amendment bill, 2015. 19.5, Eastern Health Authority third budget review. 19.6, request for review of council decision, request to write operate steps. So, and 19.7, capital works progress report. Okay, so we're moving on block 18.2, 19.2, 19.4, 19.5, and 19.7. So someone would like to make that. The lead will speak to it. Someone will speak to it, please. Councillor Standen would like to speak to it. Anyone else like to speak to it? All those in favour? Those against? Carried. Now I'd just like to, if the meeting's happy, just bring forward 19.3. So we have Paul Kelly in the gallery tonight from Norman Toilets, who would like to speak to us about bylaws. Are you happy to bring that one forward? Yeah. I'd also like to suspend meeting procedures for 20 minutes to 27 minutes past 7, just so we have some discussion on that. So all those in favour of suspending meeting procedures? But yes. Okay. Do you want to join us up near Nat Navy?
Paul has assisted with the drafting of the bylaws. They get reviewed once every 8 years, 7 years?
7 years plus the 1st of January of the year following.
So Paul will just give us an overview of what he's done and be open for any questions.
Thank you. The first thing I did when looking at the bylaws was to obviously go to your current set of bylaws. I see no reason to change what the community has been used to as far as laws are concerned. These are simply third tier laws going from Acts of Parliament through to regulation onto bylaws governing anything of municipal concern for your area. Looking at your bylaws, they were quite comprehensive, made in 2008. From there I added in anything that I thought would be of assistance to your staff. The reason why I said anything was because about 3 years ago I took a matter for the Adelaide City Council relating to the preachers to the High Court on appeal, and the High Court said that really anything of municipal concern can be used, you have a head power to make as a bylaw. So over the years since then I've drafted several bylaws and I simply added those clauses into the City of Prospect bylaws to assist you and your staff. It doesn't mean that you have a history of that type of behaviour. For example, preaching. It pops up, it's there within the clauses to assist your staff in dealing with it. You'll note there that we don't want to go through each of the bylaws generally. We don't want to go through each of the bylaws generally.
By exception, if people have questions or even just highlight the areas of change.
Certainly. Your report for this evening at page 3, at the top of page 3 at 5.7.1 deals with the first bylaw permits and penalties. This really just sets up a regime whereby you can give permission to individuals of the community to be exempted from the application of the bylaw, any bylaw. As the word says, it also sets up penalties. Generally speaking, for a breach of the bylaw, the penalty would be $187.50, which is 25% of the maximum penalty. by resolution of the council, you can amend that so that things that you think are probably less severe by way of offence would be a lesser fine. For example, misusing council land might be $187.50 as a maximum. Not but my advice would be to leave it there in case it does become a problem. You can be proactive in the drafting. Local government land bylaw number 3, you'll see there many bullet points that I've added. You could skim through those generally and ask questions, if you like, in relation to those bullet points. They're extras. For example, the 4th bullet point, you may not ever have had problems with bees, people placing bees on local government land, but it's there in case it happens. Same with bridge dumping. Model aircraft down the bottom there, fourth to last on that page. It would also deal with, I thought to myself that, that these types of craft are going to become more and more common over the next 8 years. So I've worded it so that it can deal with drones and your staff can stop that.
Let's raise a question, or do that afterwards?
Can we just,
Yep,
yeah,
that's fine.
Certainly, roads, I'll make the same comments in relation to, sorry, just going on to that page 4, the following clauses have either been incorporated into other clauses of the draft bylaw 3 or removed in its entirety. A lot of that's got to do with the disapproval of the Legislative Review Committee. My appearance on the Legislative Review Committee over the last 2 or 3 years, it suggests that they really don't like the concept of you making a bylaw dealing with canvassing. People have become a nuisance in relation to canvassing. The police will deal with it, and rather than have your staff at risk, then the police can just deal with it. Same with fireworks, which is simply a weapon, potentially. Digging soil and engaged in those sorts of things that you would normally expect. I've simply incorporated them into other clauses of the bylaws. Roads is a far more prescriptive bylaw on the basis that whilst Section 208 of the Local Government Act gives you ownership in fee simple of the roads, there are many other people or bodies in authority, namely the Highways Department, Transport SA, etc., that have to deal with the roads, and therefore your head powers are not as great as you would expect for local government land. Dogs, I've placed a limit on the dog numbers. Dog feces is an extra. That may be something that you have concerns about. Going on there to waste management, I think that remains essentially the same. It's distinguishing between household waste, recyclables and green organics as your bins dictate. I'll say nothing more about the clauses. I think they're all reasonably self-explanatory and, as I said, essentially the same.
thank you. Questions, Councillor Bowman?
There's just a couple of them. So I'm very new to bylaws and laws generally, but just in regards to pavement movable banners, those kind of things, because we're seeing a lot more people using scooters, I'm just wondering, when you're looking at things on the pavement versus laws to do with disability access, if one higher than the other, or do they work together, or in regards to?
I'm not exactly sure of that question. Are you talking about scooters being driven on the road?
Well, I've seen them using the footpath, so that's just one thing that where I don't know the laws around it or what bylaws apply.
Is that a mobility scooter or a motor scooter?
Mobility scooters.
Sorry, okay, a mobility scooter. The way that I've drafted the bylaw is to enable those types of uses to go without impediment. For example, if one looks at the clause 5 of the proposed bylaw in relation to placement, you've got to leave a clear thoroughfare of at least 1.2 metres to allow that access and lawful access.
Yep.
Bicycles are used for children under, I think it's 12. Motor scooters, disability wheelchairs. Of particular interest would be people with prams, also lawful use. So the bylaw has been drafted in order to create that width, and that's not to say that you can't further limit that. It's a balancing act between that and the allowing the commercial use of the road or the footpath.
So potentially there's areas along Prospect Road where we wouldn't even have that 1.2 metres. There was just another question in regards to exemptions for charitable purpose, which is fine, but I guess like a charity shop that's ongoing, would that be the same laws as a commercial business?
Yes, it would be.
It would be. So there's no differentiation between?
No. Not when you look at the interpretation of that. That's not to say that you cannot. This gives an unqualified exemption to a charitable organisation from the bylaw in its entirety.
In its entirety. So if it was an ongoing operation that happened to be charitable, they could put their thing out front in it.
Correct.
But it could impede access.
And it could impede access, and that is where that your officers would get involved in negotiating an appropriate placement of that particular sign.
It just means it doesn't trigger a fine straight away.
Correct. The council staff will not be able to issue fines to that charitable function, but having said that, I'll qualify those comments that Section 40N, capital N, of the Road Traffic Act allows your staff to, and empowers your staff to remove objects which are dangerous and create a hazard. Okay. So they would be empowered there.
Does that override the bylaw?
Well, it works in conjunction with, yes.
Yeah.
Well, to a large extent it would override, yes. Yeah, anything that's a hazard or an obstacle on the road, including the footpath, you will have that power.
And there was, I think it was just one more question we had. I know this is going out to consultation, but we had feedback from someone in regards to the usage of the word carriageway, and it wasn't actually articulated. Maybe something that could be added to the definitions, perhaps.
I read that. I was supplied that this afternoon. I've read it, and my advice was to not do so because of first of all the widespread and understood definition of the term carriageway. Its definition contained within the Australian Road Rules and the Road Traffic Act. I would prefer not to specify the exact term because if I needed to, for whatever reason, enlarge it, you would be able to because of the lack of definition. But generally speaking, a carriageway is gutter to gutter,
right?
Not including the footpath.
Because I know that we have sort of some unclear areas on Churchill Road where you've actually got pavement that doubles as parking space, and it will. I think I could see an issue there with some of the higher density, what we actually define as an issue. because it's not actually defined by a gutter. You see what I mean? You know, those parking bays.
Yeah, verge. That's verge parking. Is that you're referring to? Yeah. Yeah.
But I think effectively there's still gutter there.
There's a spoon drain, but that's still.
So some of them you actually park up on the. Yeah.
Good say that that could be. They call it almost like a barrier, although there isn't an upright curb.
Yeah.
There's a spoon drain through there or a curb and channel.
It's just something I'd like to draw your attention to, because I think potentially with the high density, which is the other question that I'm looking at, is obviously given our changing demographics, so we're going to higher density, would the bylaws give us the power to address some of the changing waste, I suppose, requirements or the number of bins that we're going to have? I don't know if that's been discussed with the council administration. I suppose it's a question, maybe through the chair, to the relevant staff to planning and asset management, how we're actually going to manage multiple bins and through with bylaws.
With the bins, it was stipulated some time ago that it would be a 3-bin system. Anything above that, you'd have to write formally to council, and it would be assessed on its merit and what type of bin it is. So it's clearly defined when we first originally set up the contract, and the contract only allows for a certain stretch of bins across the community before it needs to be renegotiated. So hopefully that's So that's the bin as far as a contract. But then as far as planning, if it's and Chris can speak to this. A lot of the waste would have to be contained on site.
Yeah.
Contracted out at some stage. Yeah. That rather than presenting a bin on the footpath as is the traditional form on a basic residence.
That's correct. That's the solution that we're seeing with a lot of the multi-storey developments, is that they are proposing to work on contractors, separating three waste streams.
Oh.
Still consistent with the bylaws, require that separation.
So that's the way it's being handled. That's why I was just I was just thinking the changing landscape. Is the bylaws going to be able to deal with it? So that's my question's answered.
I'll just point out there, if you look at the proposed bylaw 5.7.2.2, I drafted a clause there that will allow your staff the ability to direct a high-rise set of buildings to place the bins in a position as they see fit. So it allows for that discretion and that flexibility as well. So you can move away from the traditional curb frontage.
Yeah, I have a question. In the dog management section, so part 2, under number 8, dog feces, a person must carry with them a bag or an object for purpose of picking up the feces. How are you going to enforce that? Like, how are you going to know if someone, how do you know whether someone's got a bag on them or not? And if let's say our management guy, our safety officer goes up and sees a person walking a dog and goes, have you got your bag on you? It's a bylaw. And they go, yeah, I've got it. Unless we provide people with bags, like I've suggested before that we actually send a roll of bags to every household, unless we actually facilitate bags, we're a society who have, South Australia was the first state to get rid of shopping bags. So we don't have shopping bags that people can use unless you have little freezer bags or something like that. How do we expect people to have bags if we don't provide them? So, A, are we going to provide the bags so that they can comply with the bylaw? If not, where are they going to get these bags? Do they have to buy them? Do we provide that for them? Secondly, how do we enforce it? Do we go up there and frisk them and make sure they've got bags, or do we wait for them to do a poo? And
Look, more question for Greg, I think.
Yeah. Look, I'll try to answer it. Look, we do provide bags at our parks.
But from the house, my dog does 3 poos to the house to the park.
Yeah.
So I have to the way that I do it, I go and get the bags from the park, and if the park always runs out, it's because people are preempting their dog doing poos between the house and the park. So between the house and the park, that's the point where you can get pinged.
It is a common law now, and if you, I guess, we assume that as a pet owner, a responsible pet owner, they would be prepared for that walk, and they would have some sort of, any bag will do. I don't think it's a purpose-built bag.
Is there a penalty applies to this?
It does. It's only if you're caught in the act, I guess. They wouldn't. I've never heard of a community safety officer frisking or asking someone if they're carrying a bag. They're actually it'll only if they're caught.
So if you run out of bags and your dog happens to crank one out on the way to the park,
you could get penalised for that. Yeah, you could receive an expiation.
Well, once again, I will raise it another time. Maybe we need to actually provide a role. Maybe we need to provide a roll of dog bags instead of the little disposable kitchen bags, which we quite happily give out, but I don't use.
We could take that on.
A roll of dog bags would help.
Probably a conversation for the time, but thank you.
Yeah.
Captain Chief, got a question just before we do. We ran out of time. Let's see the meeting. Agreement to suspend meeting procedures for another 15 minutes. All those in favour? All those in favour? Those in favour of suspending meeting procedures for another 15 minutes? Those against? Thank you. Councillor Evans.
And questions of Paul, and it's more just generally about bylaws. Are we doing anything unique or distinctive or out of the ordinary by having these bylaws and by proposed changes? I understand they're mostly administrative and that there's not an awful lot here that is reactionary to any problem at the moment, just keeping up with the Joneses in terms of how the laws progressed and evolved over the course of the last 7 years. Is there anything out of that general scope that's occurred in redrafting these?
No, your bylaws are very similar to many metropolitan councils now. I can say that I've drafted similar bylaws with differences depending on your areas. In the last, this year for Charles Sturt, Marion, Walkerville, Playford. So no, there's nothing particularly unique about it. Just going back to the other question in relation to feces, there are vacancies in that law, but as your director quite correctly pointed out, the discretion of your officers or inappropriate use of the discretion of the officers cannot be legislated for or against. And I have found that on all occasions, I have never once found that to be inappropriately applied.
Any other questions for Mr. Kelly before we go back to session? Just before you do it, just pick up
get up for in bylaw number 2, movable signs, clause 5.9. I think there might be a couple of words missing. So it's about the placement of movable signs. Is that meant to read not be placed within 10 metres?
Correct.
Yeah, just before.
Yep. A movable sign displayed on the road must, at 5.9, not be placed within 10 metres of an intersection of a road.
So small edit. Security.
Sorry, the limit on the dog number isn't changed. If you could just let members know why that's added. For the dog bylaw.
Yes.
So limiting the number of dogs to do the full property.
Small property defined like land size.
Yes. I think it's for the square metre.
So, question about the dogs. Mr. Kelly, can you answer that?
Oh, apologies, I am a bit hard of hearing.
Oh, sorry.
The question was the current bylaws, as they stand up to 1st of January 2016, in a small dwelling more than one dog. I've changed the word to in a small property shall be one dog, so that limit does not change. The small dwelling or small property means a property involving any self-contained dwelling where the property is does not have an unobstructed yard of 100 square metres. That's my language. The current bylaw then says that in any other premises other than a small dwelling, more than 2 dogs. That remains the same as well.
So the wording's been changed, not the number of dogs?
Correct. Yeah, it's essentially small dwelling to a small property, defined small property.
Okay, any other questions? I'd like to work getting a bit of a straw poll because we have 2 options for this recommendation. Option 1 has 4 parts to it. Option 2, which is council seeking further amendments. Can I get a bit of a straw poll? People like to support option 1? Just raise your hands. Like to support option 2?
Still finding my, yeah.
Not sure. Those not sure.
I'm those not sure.
Okay. So, thank you, Mr. Kelly. I'd like you to take a seat back in the gallery if that's all right. We'll go back to the session now. And I'll ask for a mover for option 1. If someone can move it. Councillor Evans, do you want to speak to us? Somebody second that. Councillor Standard, would you like to speak to us?
Good, thank you.
Anybody like to speak? No? Okay, all those in favour? Oh, sorry. Yes. Sorry, yes. Thank you, Kerry. Councillor Evans, would you like to wrap up?
I will say a few words just because it's important and probably requires it. The fundamental thing here is that there's not a lot out of the ordinary that's changing, in my view. It's more a case of the evolution of the law and us keeping up with the evolution of the law under the usual process. I think it's important to note through this as well that we're not actually endorsing bylaws tonight, so it's not a fait accompli. This is for consultation. So now what we do is we've got a good start. We go out to the community. We ask the community what they think. I'm no doubt sure that there will be further discussion and debate over the course of the coming months as that occurs. Look forward to that rigorous discussion. It seems like everything's been done properly and through the usual processes, and to thank our guest Paul Kelly for coming this evening and telling us the changes that have occurred and explaining them to us. I have confidence that we have a good set of bylaws here to recommend to the community, and look forward to supporting the resolution.
Councillor Evans, all those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. Okay, moving on to 30.1. I've actually pulled this out. This is the report of the Chief Executive Officer Performance Development Review Committee, which was held in April. So look, the reason I pulled this one out was just to, I think it's always very important to acknowledge the work of the CEO, and I've been on the Performance Review Committee for some years now, or last term and also this term, and I think it's often a good opportunity just to thank the CEO for what he's been doing. The council certainly punches above our weight, and that's by no means feat. A lot of that has to do with the work that he does with staff and working with us as the elected members as well. The report, which hopefully we'll have a chance to find and read, recommends 3 things that the committee is putting up to council as a whole. Obviously, one is that the council receive and note the report, but also to continue to engage us nationally and consultant working with the CEO community for the term of this council, so that locks us in for the next 3 years with Alison. He's been doing it for some time, very well-known local government sector, and does a very good job in assisting us with supporting that and performance. And review the KPIs to that 15-16, which is a standard process we use each year. So I just think it's important to acknowledge those things, and that's why I put it out, and would like to seek someone to move that. So I will just speak to it. I will accept it.
Just wanted to say that I concur with Councillor Group. We are quite lucky to have an extraordinary CEO such as Mark. He works very hard for us. We have gathered an extraordinary executive team and management team around him. And not only does he work very hard for us, he works very hard within the broader local government community to bring local government up to a standard and up to a to bring it out of the doldrums of the past and start moving it forward. So we very much appreciate all your efforts.
Anybody else like to speak to the motion? No. Vote.
I didn't come prepared. But,
All those in favour? Those against? It's carried unanimously. And moving on to 30.2, I also put this one out. So this is the recorded audit committee meeting. I did so for one purpose in particular. If I can just take you to page 1279, section 10.4, point 1.A, which just is a recognition of the work that staff have been doing on the draft annual business plan 2013. I know everyone at our table is very appreciative of the work that goes into the annual business plan every year, and I think there's an opportunity to thank Chris and in perhaps it's Jimmy as well for that work. And so that's all I pulled that particular paper out. I don't ask to come back to me.
I will move it, and I will speak to this substantive. I too would actually really like to thank the staff for the draft budget. It was and just seeing how it came together, and also seeing the kids from Prospect Primary tear it apart as well, and that's really good. So I think if it's more accessible and more digestible, I think our residents are going to get a lot more from it and be able to interact with it a bit more. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Somebody else second that. Standard. What else would like to speak to that? Just wrap up your own good speech.
Just congratulations again, and I'm interested to see what the final report. Oh, thank you again, and yeah, I'm looking forward to see what the results of the community consultation are.
Thank you. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. 18.1, appointment of presiding member, independent members to the government assessment panel. Councillor Bowman pulled it out. Brief reading. Low pulled it out.
Standing up. Yeah. So, as a member of the development assessment panel, the David Cook, who's been elected.
Just a reason.
Oh, just a reason? Okay, because I was querying his availability as he has been a virtual member, and I just wanted to ensure that he would be a physical member.
Do you want to move?
Do I move it, then I can get the answer? Okay, I'll move it.
Excellent.
I do a question now? Okay, I would like to ask if the elected presiding, or the appointed presiding member, or to be appointed, David Cook, will be physically available for the 4 years that he will be here. We've got a calendar for his movement.
Through the chair, just a minor correction. It's a 2-year term. It's
2 years.
Sorry. David has advised that he'll be back in the country in August. I'm anticipating mid-August when he finishes his studies in California. So if appointed, he would miss the first 2 meetings of the DAP, potentially, if DAP meetings are held in July and August. To date, he has managed to participate very well via video conference, and I'd anticipate that he would continue to do that as the chair. In the event that there are any issues with him chairing the meeting, then the process of the meeting can be facilitated by council staff or another member of the DAP without any issue when it comes to standard meeting procedures of the DAP.
One more question. Is it a policy of council admin generally that being a virtual member is acceptable? So, for example, other independent members could potentially be virtual, only because I have concerns with it, because I think to physically see a site and go out and see the context is quite an important function of an independent or elected member on the DAP. And I just, is the David Cook being a virtual member, or an actual member, but virtually here, I'm just concerned that is a bit of a precedent, and I'd rather see people physically here.
So the question is, can other people also attend virtually?
Through the chair, I'm not aware of any policy that precludes attendance at meetings via video conferencing or teleconferencing in this case. I think there would be issues if it were taken up by multiple members of the same committee, but it has worked effectively at council workshops and at meetings, and I understand even council meetings there may have been. No? Well, council's lagging behind at times, but that is setting the standard. But there is no policy, but I've taken comments on board in terms of the potential risks, I guess, to the assessment process if we had multiple members of the
So I have to always do this as a question, or not? Okay, or I can just make a comment. Okay, so I think I'd just like to make it known that I have a little bit of an issue with the virtual thing, only because I don't know what our legal risk would be should we have an event where we've got a DAP meeting and you may have a couple of virtual members who haven't actually been to the site, and that's a concern for me. So as an elected member, just want to note that.
But thanks, I think Alison has said it all.
Anyone else would like to speak to the motion? Councillor
I think we have some outstanding candidates for presiding member and for independent member. I'm not sure about Darren Starr, but I know that Sam Green it will be a very valuable member. David is extraordinary in his knowledge of architecture and of planning, and I think he will make a very good presiding member. And I don't think that missing 2 meetings, or perhaps running 2 meetings in the virtual capacity, is going to diminish his excellence at being a DAP member and being a presiding member of DAP. So I would urge that we have some very good people on this coming up on the DAP, and I would urge other elected members to go forward.
Thanks, Councillor Lee. Anyone else got to speak? Councillor Bowman, over to you.
Getting lots of practice today. So thank you for answering my questions. I'm quite confident that council admin can step in if David Cook is not physically able in whatever capacity to run the meeting. And I concur with Monica Lee that I think we've got a fantastic calibre of DAP members to look over the next couple of years on our development assessment panel. Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favour? Those against? Been carried. 19.1, loans third-party policy. Councillor Evans, you talked about for reasons required.
I called the report and more or less just to say my piece.
Would you like to move the motion? Over to you.
Well, thank you. Really, it's just to thank the staff, and in particular, no doubt, Chris, I think you would have put some effort into this. It is pleasing to see that we do have a policy on the issue. So at the time we were debating issuing a loan, it was just a case of is there a policy that underpins this to ensure fair and equitable, I guess, application of the idea, the funding idea across the board. We do have that through our accounting policies and procedures manual, and that's reassuring to know. So thanks to the staff for putting together that report.
Thank you. How about you second that? Councillor Stanton, just speaks.
I think Councillor Evans has said it all. I think Councillor Evans has said it all.
Anyone else would like to speak? Councillor Evans, over to you to wrap up Councillor Stanton's speech. That's fine. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. 9.6, a request to write a grant step review. Councillor Bowman, for a reason.
Yeah, through the Chair, I'd just like some clarification about was this an error on our part to start with, and is it being rectified? That's what it is, yeah.
Do you want to move the motion?
Is it?
Okay.
Okay. So I was just wanting to clarify, was it an error on our part, and is that why we're writing it off?
Yeah. Okay. Mr. Chair, in short, yes, it is an error on officer's behalf. However, the decision was made based on the information we had. We are working with the Baby General's Office to try and ascertain better information for future decision making to hopefully prevent this from happening again.
Thank you very much. So, yes, I'm done.
I'm here to second the motion. Councillor Stanton, just speak to it.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor Bowman, do you see the need to wrap up? All those in favour? Those against? And carried. Next one, I'm very easy to say. Okay, that's it for the papers. Diary next. Lots happening. What's going on tomorrow night? We've got the Heritage DPA meeting. So that's tomorrow at 7 o'clock, and I think we'll all be there. Captain Stan will be in apology, but everyone else will be there as far as I'm aware, which gives us score. Oh, and it is a special council meeting, so not public meeting. It's a special council meeting, so will be recorded. So those not here have the opportunity to watch it at their leisure. Prospect Farmers Market on Thursday, Club 502. We heard from Brooke earlier tonight about Club 502, so that will be on this Friday. North Adelaide versus North on Saturday. If you haven't got to football yet, make sure you come along. It's always good fun. The other things going on, the Broadview Recreation Precinct Master Plan Survey closes on Sunday, so you can encourage your networks to participate in that process. And we have a gallery opening on Sunday afternoon as well, with a watch of Connections. Pigment prints. I encourage you to come on to that. Budget public consultation meeting next Tuesday between 6 and 7, so that will be before our workshop. So there'll be an opportunity for people to come along and certainly have a chat. Chat to us about the budget. I'm sure people have heard things already from members of the community, which is good. Over the page, St Helens Kindergarten lease renewal consultation. Another consultation closes on the 5th of June. Proposed annual business plan budget consultation closes on that same day. Next Wednesday week, digital stakeholders workshop. That's running at Shankers at 6 o'clock starts. So that will be always good at Club 582 as well. Music performance in Prospect Town Hall on Friday the 19th of June. And an NBN session. You've got NBN hooked up, a great box inside of your house. Good opportunity to go to the information session on the 23rd of June at the Hub. So I'll move on to general business. Are there any matters of general business? Okay, general business of an urgent nature. No confidential items tonight, and under an hour I